All right, so you just learned your modes. Maybe you just had a little bit of a breakthrough with a guitar teacher, or you went to the YouTube University and checked out some videos, and you think you're really getting it. And the next question is how do I use them? How do I know when to use them? How do I know when to play Lydian mode or Dorian mode or whatever it is, right? That's what I want to talk about in this video, so let's get into it. What you're going to see is common chord progressions that correlate to different modes happen all the time. Now, these are not rules written in stone or anything, but these are generalized things that you can pretty much bank on, I think. So in order to understand which mode you should play, you kind of have to understand how scales and chords correlate with each other. See, you harmonize a scale to get a series of chords. So usually we do that in a major scale or in a major key. Let's say C major, for example. So if we take a C major scale and we harmonize it, we get a series of chords. Now, when you're playing a mode, you're playing in a different key, and what you've done is you've just changed the tonal center to a different chord in that key. So for example, if I was playing C Lydian, well, Lydian is really just G major, right? It's the fourth mode of G major, but everything might kind of gravitate back to that C major chord, and that's what gives it that C Lydian sound. So there are a couple of different very common chord progressions that you're going to see in these different modes. So I'm going to go over that. But before I do, I just kind of want to give you a little thing I kind of drew up here that hopefully kind of helps illustrate what the difference is of these modes. And I kind of separated them up between the typical major modes and the typical minor modes. So let's check it out. Okay, you can see here I've done a little diagram of just what modal harmony is. And I'm starting with the C Ionian mode, and C Ionian is really just a fancy word for C major. So if you take a C major scale, and you take the C note, the D note, the E note, F, G, A, B, and you harmonize them, you get these series of chords. Now I did these to seventh chords. Sometimes you just do them to triads, but just remember a major seventh chord and dominant seventh chords are also major chords at their core. So what we get here is we get 3 major chords, 3 minor chords, and kind of this oddball minor 7 flat 5 chord. Now, if you're playing in C Lydian, you're really playing in the key of G, but what you've done is you've just restructured it so that the C is now the 1, right? Instead of G major being the 1, now the C major chord is the 1. But see what the changes there is it changes the 2 chord. So if I'm playing in the key of C Ionian or C major, the 2 chord is D minor, but if I'm playing it on a Lydian sound, the 2 chord is a major chord or a dominant 7th chord. So that's a really common sign that you're playing in a Lydian mode, because that's really the difference between these two sounds, right? Ionian, which is just C major, and C Lydian, which is really G major. Well, they're going to have different chords in them, okay? Another really common one is this B minor chord. So you might have a C major going down to B minor rather than B minor 7 flat 5. That tells you that you're playing in C Lydian. Okay, so let's check it out. Here's a really common C Lydian type chord progression. I'm going to play just a C major chord. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this C major triad up to D, but I'm going to keep the C in the bass. You can already tell it's got that sound, right? This is very reminiscent of like Joe Satriani's Flying in a Blue Dream. Sometimes it's just the chord moving up. Might just go from C major to D major. You see, the only key where those 2 chords exist is the key of G. It's the 4 and the 5 chord in the key of G, but we may never play a G chord in this little chord progression, so I would think of it as kind of a C Lydian chord progression. All right. Another example might be if I go down a half step to a minor chord. So if I go from C major to B minor, I could think of that as a C Lydian type sound, because I'm still kind of gravitating back to this C major chord, but I'm still in the key of G. Now, if I was in the key of C, the B chord would be a minor 7 flat 5 or half diminished, which is different, right? I'm not doing that. I'm going to B. So if you wanted to check this out, I will guarantee you most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, if you were to go onto YouTube and just type in C Lydian backing track, those are the common kind of chord progressions that you're going to see. You're going to see something like maybe C going to D, or you're going to see C going to D with the C staying in the bass. Or maybe you'll see C going down a half step to B minor. So all those would be C Lydian, really common type chord progressions. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to type in C Lydian into my YouTube search engine and see what comes up and just play a little bit over one to give you an example. Okay, cool. I found this really cool one. It's looks like it's by a guy named Pliny or something to do with Pliny, and he's pretty cool. So let's hear what it sounds like and just check out the chords first and see if we can deduce that it is in fact in C Lydian. So the first chord is C. And then we're going to the D. Up to D, there it is. There's that Lydian chord progression. So, you know, if I was to play C Lydian, which is really just a G major scale, it should sound pretty good. Let's check it out. Yeah, works awesome. Okay, so that's an example of a C Lydian type chord progression. What about C Mixolydian? So that's another major sounding mode. So I'm starting with the major modes first. And what you want to do is you want to, contrast C Mixolydian against just C major or C Ionian. So let's check that out. Okay, so here's C Mixolydian. And C Mixolydian is the fifth mode of F major. So it's going to have the same chords as the key of F, but kind of starting, you're almost thinking like the C7 or the 5 chord is now the new 1, okay? And you can compare these to maybe the C Ionian, and you notice, well, first chord is a C dominant chord. That's different. That's a dead giveaway. But let's say it wasn't. Let's just say it was a C major chord, okay? A really, really common chord progression that you see in Mixolydian is a 1 chord moving to a flat 7 chord. So in this case, like B flat. So sometimes it might just be the chords moving, like C major to B flat. Or it might be the chords moving but the root staying the same. So kind of like a C and then a B flat with the C in the bass. That's a really good indication that you're probably in the Mixolydian type sound. Now another really common one is a 1 chord going to a flat 7 chord and then over to a major 4 chord. Now this is like every classic rock song, right? Okay, you could think, well, I got a major chord, that's my first chord, then I have this flat 7. What you're really playing is you're really playing a 5-4-1 in the key of F, and F is C Mixolydian. They're one and the same, right? All right, so let's do the same thing. I'm going to type in C Mixolydian backing track, see what I get. I'm pretty sure it's going to be some kind of chordal structure like that. That's a really common type thing, so let's check it out. Okay, so I typed in C Mixolydian backing track, and this is one of the first ones. Let's listen to it real quick. Let's figure out the chords, and then we'll know. Ooh, a little intro. And what we're probably going to do is go from C to B flat, just back and forth. You hear that? There's your C, B flat. But you see the bass is kind of staying on the C. It's the guitar is kind of doing a C major triad to a B flat. It's a telltale sign that we're playing Mixolydian. I'm going to play a little Mixolydian mode. right? So that's a really good indication. That's kind of like a really telltale sign you're playing in a Mixolydian type sound. And I like to break these modes up into major sounds and minor sounds, right? So those are kind of your major sounding modes, your Ionian mode, which is just the major scale. Then you have your Lydian mode, which is the fourth mode of the major scale, C Lydian being G. And then C Mixolydian is really F. So those chords are going to come from F. How about our minor sounds now? Okay, well, let's just look at the Aeolian mode, because a lot of times people refer to the Aeolian mode as the natural minor scale. And so it's kind of like the jumping off points. Let's jump over to our little diagram here. Okay, see, we have Aeolian. It's the relative minor of C major, so it's basically going to have the same chords as C major here. But again, we're going to restructure it so kind of like A minor is kind of the one. I guess there's probably some debate on whether or not you should do that depending on who you talk to, but I think it's pretty common to think of keys in minor keys too. Now, basically what we're doing is we're in the key of C, but our tonal center has shifted to the A minor, so we're kind of thinking of the A minor as the one chord. And then here's our chords. It's the same chords that are in the key of C, just kind of starting from A. All right. So there, common chord progressions that you see in an A minor, A Aeolian, is maybe you'll be playing A minor to D minor, like a minor 4 chord, okay? Or maybe A minor to F major, like a flat 6 major chord. So maybe going from A minor that minor 4 chord, A minor to D minor, that's a real telltale sign that I'm playing in the Aeolian mode. Or maybe something like this, A minor to F major. Or the quintessential classic rock, Stairway to Heaven, A minor, G to F. All right, those are all Aeolian style chord progressions. So then the next question is what about the Dorian mode? What's the difference? Well, A Dorian, and I'm doing this from the same root so we can really kind of cross-reference these. A Dorian, well, that's really the second mode of G, so that's going to have the same chords as the key of G. Now, what we can do is we can look at what is the difference here. How do I know when I'm playing in Dorian and not Aeolian? Well, the first one that really pops out here is it has a minor 2 chord as opposed to a minor 7 flat 5 2 chord that is found in the Aeolian sound, right? That's a really telltale sign, and there's a lot of tunes that do that. It might go from A minor just up a whole step to B minor. Something like that. But I think the more common one is this 4 chord. You see, the 4 chord in A Aeolian or A minor is a minor chord, but in a Dorian sound it would be either a major or a dominant 7th chord. And you hear these chord progressions all over the place. Carlos Santana did it, Pink Floyd, they're all over the place, especially classic rock. Maybe you go from A minor to D7 or D9. So in that case, I definitely know that I need to play Dorian in that situation. So what you got to do is get in the habit of kind of analyzing chord progressions. Like if somebody gives you a chord chart or something like that, you want to be able to look at it really quickly and decipher, especially if you have to take a solo or improvise. You want to know like kind of what the right scales or modes are to play, right? Eventually, if you haven't already, your ear will start to be able to hear those chords, and immediately you'll know, oh, I should be playing Dorian minor instead of natural minor. Now, in some cases, these modes can cross-pollinate. So what I did was I typed in a Dorian mode, and one of the sounds that came up was a kind of a mixture of the A Dorian sound and the A Aeolian sound. These things can cross-pollinate. So I'll show you what we got here. So if I play this track a little bit, the beginning of it is just, it says A minor, but okay, you hear that little funky guitar there? That little funky guitar is going. It's playing that major 6th note that is found in the Dorian mode. So that tells me, my ear told me right away, that's a Dorian sound, okay? Even though it just says A minor. So you're kind of thinking of this backing track as this is the A section and this is maybe the B section. So the A section here is an A Dorian, but then when it flips over to the B section, you can see it says F major 7 to E minor to A minor. That F major 7 tells me that we're playing in Aeolian mode. So I'm going to jam over this a little bit and tell me if you can hear the difference. Dorian. All right, so it works perfectly. So that's just that's actually really common too, where chord progressions will kind of cross-pollinate modes like that. Okay, so the last minor mode that we have is the Phrygian mode. Probably not as common as these other modes. The Aeolian mode or the natural minor scale and the Dorian mode are definitely the most common. But there is the Phrygian mode, and we might run into that from time to time. So let's jump over to our little diagram here and take a look at what our Phrygian, A Phrygian. So A Phrygian is really the third mode of F major. That means it's going to have all the chords that are in the key of F major, but we're just going to kind of restructure this, okay? We're going to restructure this so that our tonal center is the A minor. And the first thing that I notice right here is that if I'm playing an A Aeolian or A Dorian, I have a natural 2 chord here, right? One is a minor 7 flat 5, one is a minor 7. But in Phrygian, we have a flat 2 chord. So we've got A minor going to B flat major. And this is one of the most telltale signs that you're playing in Phrygian. Okay, another really common one, or maybe not quite as common, but a common one is going to a minor chord down a whole step. So if I go from A minor something like that, A minor, the G minor, everything kind of gravitates back towards that A chord, so that's my tonal center, but that G minor is telling me that I'm playing in a Phrygian type minor sound. So once again, I just kind of, looked for a Phrygian backing track on YouTube, and let's listen to it real quick and see what we got. And I think we'll probably hear and see some of these same things that I was just mentioning. So I'm going to play a little bit, and we'll listen for the chords. This one's got, I think it just goes A minor to B flat major. Minor to B flat major, just a minor half step major up, right? So if I can play a little bit of F major, which is A Phrygian, same thing, I should be playing the right mode. Okay, works perfectly. All the telltale signs of Phrygian were there. Minor chord, follow, half step up by a major chord. Boom. All right. So these are some of the shortcuts, right? You've got to be able to recognize these pretty quickly, whether it's reading it off a page or hopefully hearing it by ear, because you want to be able to decipher that. And of course, these are not hard rules. These are just observations. These are just kind of ways that you can look at this. And I think it's really important to know, and also get your ear to know what's going on, because sometimes you might be just on a gig or playing with some friends or whatever it is, and someone throws out a song. Maybe you don't know the chords that well. You're just kind of learning as you go. You want to be able to decipher, like, okay, what kind of sound am I in here, right? So I hope that this helped you kind of unlock some of the mysteries of the modes. It's an ongoing concept. You know, I've seen many videos here on YouTube of people describing the modes, and they can be really confusing. So I hope I didn't add to that confusion. Let me know what you think in the comments below, if this helped clear anything up. And, you know, also let me know if you have any ideas you'd like me to talk about. But until then, I will see you next time around. Cheers.